it's a tremendous, really a great honor and a schut to introduce Judy Weinberger. And your maiden name, you were a Frank. Born in Budapest, in Hungary.
Right.
Do you remember what year you were born in?
Of course, I remember. I was there, 1933.
1933. Wow, in Budapest.
Budapest, right.
And Judy, you have the most amazing, I'd even say, the great schut that you were one of those very few that went on the Kastner.
That's right.
I don't know if you call it the famous or infamous, but you were on the Kastner train.
That's right.
And that saved your life.
Yes.
And okay, so how old were you when you went on the train? If you were born in 33?
So I was 11.
11.
It was 1944.
Do you still
remember? I wasn't yet 11,
okay.
But between 10, I was 10 and a half or something.
And do you remember the war years in Hungary, in Budapest?
Yes, the war years were not yet in effect in Hungary as such.
Came very late.
The Germans came in very late, 1944 actually. Yeah. And the Nazis occupied. We had some laws because Hungary had enough Nazi sympathizers that some of the laws were even earlier than that. But the ghetto didn't start till the Germans came, and the star, the yellow star you had to wear, didn't start till then. And Jewish stores were still functioning. And then when they came in, that's when the major laws went into effect.
Which part of Budapest did you live in?
In the Jewish section. The Jewish section, not far from the community house. The Dobutca was the center of Budapest Jews. Király utca was next to that. And the community house was in the Dobutca. The Jewish school was there also. There was 2 Jewish schools actually. The lower grades were different place, but this was the higher grade. And weddings took place in this same building. On the top floor was the wedding hall, and downstairs in the courtyard was a manufactured chuppah from metal, still there. And anybody who stands there, and they took pictures of standing there under the chuppah. And there is, right now, there is like a restaurant for, really a kosher restaurant. Everybody relies on it, which started out as being for the refugees, or the survivors, I should say, over there, soup kitchen-like. And then it became a restaurant as more and more tourists came.
My wife and I were there 6 years ago.
Yes, so you went to the
Hana? We went there, yeah.
To the Hana, yeah, that's where. And across the street from it was a little Israeli pizza shop where we went for breakfast. We were back twice. I've been back once with my mother in, I can't even remember which year. And then I went back again. My younger sister was born in Switzerland, so she had never been to Hungary. So we went together from here on a 3-night trip back and forth, from here to Budapest and then back here. So you could go with just an overnight bag.
Was it very emotional, very difficult going back?
No, I went the second time already, and it wasn't. I remember the streets. I was too young to have sad memories from there. My memories were good. We went to school, I had friends, we lived upper middle class life. My father had a store, he manufactured lace curtains, he invented a process that you joined. I'm sure there is a piece here. And so we had a good life up until the time the German law started. The German
and growing up, did you mix with any Hungarian children,
no.
Or was mainly you were in the Jewish area?
Jewish school, Jewish area, Jewish friends, totally sheltered life we had, till the time when the Germans first came, marched through, and the laws were immediately posted. There were giant posters, no Aryan could work for a Jew, no Jewish, a Jew couldn't go into an Aryan store, and an Aryan couldn't go into a Jewish store. There was no mixing of races, they called it. And we had to wear the yellow star, which I don't even know where my mother got the material to do, and you couldn't go out without it. If you were caught without it, you would be put to death. At least that's what I think I remember. And everything of value had to be turned in to the Germans. They opened the storefront, and you had to, a Jewish woman could only keep her marriage band Everything else had to turn into the Germans. And we were scared. I mean, I don't know. Everybody had, before the war, many people before the war had a Christian maid. And you couldn't tell, or you couldn't imagine what they could be telling about you to the Germans. Like my father had a big radio, a big Blompunkt, a German radio, but a real good sized one, which was kept in a carton because you couldn't have it. And we had a small radio. So we turned in the small radio. My mother kept some of her jewelry. It was sewn into shoulder pads and the hem of her coat. And other jewelry she turned in, because you had to have something they knew you had. So you had to have, and I can't remember whether we got receipts for it. I guess that's the only way they knew that you turned in your jewelry. And the Polish refugees were coming already. There were lots of Polish refugees already in Budapest. But we didn't believe that the Hungarians would do the same to us as the Poles did to the Jews. They opened soup kitchens for them. I remember going with my aunt once to a soup kitchen. And they told us stories of what happened to them in Poland. Not our Hungarian friends. Nah, our neighbors will do that to us. Nobody believed it. Nobody. And by that time, my grandparents and all the small towns were liquidated, were already deported. Still didn't.
This was in Hungary?
In Hungary, because the deportation started earlier. As soon as they came into Hungary, they didn't come to Budapest right away. But the deportations, by that time, all the countryside was Judenrein. They had no more Jews anywhere. Few hid here and there, but mostly they were already without.
And you know where they were deported to?
Auschwitz. They all went to Auschwitz. My mother's parents, well, brothers went to slave labor, what do you call that, conscription. They were conscripted into the army, and they were like cannon fodder. They were in front. Both died in there, in the Ukraine actually. And her sister went to Begen Belson with her husband and child, and she died after the war actually. After the liberation, she developed, what do you call that, fever. And she died 3 or 4 days after the liberation of Begen Belson. So, and her parents died in Auschwitz. The day they arrived in Auschwitz, they were older people, they went directly.
Do you think that I was in Auschwitz a month ago?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, but I never went there. But we weren't in Auschwitz, we were in Begen Belson. But it was unbelievable. We got postcards. My mother hired somebody. The way many Jews escaped there is they bought phony papers, Aryan papers. And my mother bought papers for her parents, and a shaliach went down there to bring them back to Budapest. And he went there, and he came back the next morning to say he did make contact with them, but they said they don't want to risk getting caught. So, big deal, they're going to take them to work. So, work didn't hurt anybody. They'll go to work. It
was a deception. They had
terrible
tremendous deception.
And so he never brought them. My mother had a fit. She almost murdered him if she could have. But she sent him back. You go back and don't come back without them. Well, he went back, but by that time they were in the wagons, so there was nothing that could be done. There was 3 different deportation dates from Uyel, where my grandparents lived. So he couldn't get them. And yet, when you think of it, we ourselves went away with, again, Aryan papers to a lake resort as Goyim.
It's non-Jews.
Non-Jews. As a matter of fact, we wore crosses in our neck, us, the girls, my sister and I. We had crosses, and we learned how to make the sign of the cross if you met a priest or walked by a church. And we knew the Lord's prayer. We tried to cross the street and not walk by a priest, but it didn't always happen. And so...
So you left Budapest?
Budapest. We were still in Budapest at that time, because this was early. They marched into Budapest much earlier. So we went away the beginning of June to this countryside in 44, and we were there.
Did you know? You knew that it was going when the person that your mother had sent to bring her parents back, when he came back and he said they weren't there anymore.
Right.
Is this when your family decided you had to leave Budapest?
My father decided we had to leave because we saw what was happening. The countryside was liquidated already, so we knew it's coming.
Was it publicized? Was it in the...
Even enough talk
it was
was
word
about it.
Word of mouth. People
Word of
told each
mouth.
other.
There was no Jewish papers by that time or anything. How could you publicize anything? But you saw the handwriting on the wall when you turned in your jewelry, when you had to any of you, and then there was the in Hungarian when families had to move together, ghetto houses. In Budapest, they decided they're not making a ghetto because somebody among the higher up over there decided that if the Allies would they would probably not bomb the ghetto, but this way they made individual houses. They were called Yellow Star houses. They won't know, so they won't bomb Budapest, the Allies, because of that. So our house was designated as a Yellow Star house, and one of my father's brothers had to move in with us, one of the rooms. You had 3 rooms, how many people had to live in those 3 rooms? So we knew all this was happening.
And did you know anything that was happening in the camps, in the concentration camps?
Maybe my parents had inklings, but as children, no, absolutely not.
Till 1944?
1944. Till 1944, we didn't even know about Poland, that the Jews were deported from there and killed. We didn't know. Because not our friends, our neighbors are not going to do what the Poles did. Didn't want to know. Didn't have to know. So that, and then my father was in a bunker under the store. My father had a store in the very posh section, and under the store there was a cellar or a basement, and they fixed it up. My father and my uncle stayed over there. They set it up for themselves with food and stuff, and they were hiding there. And one day my father couldn't take it anymore. He was just so claustrophobic, he decided to go out. He has to go out. And he did without a star, because how could he have wound up in the middle of this ritzy section?
And this was the non-Jewish area?
Totally non-Jewish, okay. Very non-Jewish. Wow. But took a chance, and he walked over to the Jewish section. And in front of the community house, he saw a whole bunch of people. So he asked what's going on. And they said, they don't know, but something is happening upstairs. Some people are being moved, shaved. So he went upstairs, and the guy in charge, behind one of the desks, is a schoolmate of his. So he went over to him. He was one of the organizers of his Kastner Transport. His name was Freudiger. And he went to ask him, he said, what is going on? He says, we are trying to buy passage to Palestine. So the Germans are going to take us to Palestine if we pay for ourselves. So how much does it cost? I said, don't ask. Bring whatever you have. If it will be enough, we'll go. If you don't enough, they'll throw us out. So he did. He found stock certificates, English pounds. He was in America in 1939, and he bought English pounds and dollars.
How come he was in
He came to the World's Fair. He was manufacturing this, but it's a lace, joined lace. It doesn't look like it's joined. You could make curtains and bedspreads and things. So he thought maybe he could transplant his business to America. So he came, and he already went back. The war started in September 1st. The Germans marched into Poland. So he was afraid we're going to get separated by the war. So he came back. Everybody said afterwards, why didn't he stay here? Maybe we could have come and be here. But he was afraid we can get separated. So he came back. He already came on a blacked out boat because it was already wartime. And so he heard about this transport, the train. And so, but we were about the countryside. We were by the lake in a resort. So what was going to be now? There were no telephones or cell phones. So he took a taxi, hired a taxi to come get us. And he told him he'll pay him a lot of money when he gets back with us. Gave him some, and he'll get more. And he did come, and we did get into the taxi. It's a whole story.
And this is a non-Jewish taxi?
Non-Jew, of course. And on the way there was an air raid, and you couldn't be on the road. You couldn't travel during the air raid, so we had to stop. So therefore we were delayed about 2 hours, or maybe even more. And the rendezvous point that he sent a note to my mother where we should meet, we weren't there at the time when we were supposed to have arrived already. So he got worried, and he said maybe we understood wrong, and start looking for us in different places. And we got to the rendezvous point, and he said, where were you? Your husband was just here. He's desperate. He doesn't know what's going on. He's in a panic. Where did he go? To your uncle, who lives, he wasn't from, and he lived in a different section. So my mother, now we have 4 children in the car. 3 children. 4 children in the car. And my baby sister was 6 months old. Now, 2 months old at the time. So the taxi driver said, as long as she's quiet, if she's going to cry or anything, he's going to let us go. Finish. He won't drive us anymore.
Did he know that he was transporting Jews?
I guess he did, because he kept going to the various rendezvous points that my father had given us. And a hearsay, somebody said that my mother told him if he throws us out of the car, then she'll go directly to the Danube and drown herself and her children. I don't know. I don't remember, and I doubt very much my mother said that, but okay. So anyway, we finally got to the train tracks where the train was waiting, and finally found our family where they were, in which car.
This was in Budapest?
In Budapest still. And my mother's sisters-in-law said, but your husband was just here looking for you. He just left. So my mother, of course, turns around, she's leaving. So my aunt said, don't be Miss Sugar. You've been chasing each other the whole night. Stay here, he'll come back, probably he'll come back. So my mother said, okay, but if he doesn't come back, she won't get on. And
was this the Kastner train?
Kastner train is on a siding, on a railroad siding. So anyway, it so happened that my father did come back, and he was running down calling my mother's name. My mother was calling his name, but we met. And since we didn't arrive, he had 2 sisters and my grandmother take our place. So they stayed there. So we and they, that's why it started out about the 900.
It's all like it was meant to be.
Absolutely.
So by you not being there on time, it saved
a couple more of the family. The whole thing started out, it's supposed to be, I think if I remember correctly, 980 people or something were on the transport. And they wound up to about 1,600. Because other people, same thing happened. They heard about it and they went.
And where was it? Was this in Budapest?
It was in Budapest on a railroad siding, on a freight yard. And eventually, okay, we came from the summer resort, and when we went, my mother took 2 suitcases with her. When we left, she took those 2 suitcases with her. And those 2 suitcases got onto the wagon, and that's why my mother, with a 2-month-old baby, plus my grandmother, had a seat. Everybody else had the floor. And we had something to lean against by their feet. Yeah. So, and I remember all this, but I can't remember any feelings. I don't recall being scared.
And you remember going on the train? You remember?
Sure. I remember being on the train, but I don't remember. I must have blocked it out because it was probably too horrendous to think into it. But we got on there, and after we traveled about, first all night, the train kept moving back and forth, back and forth. They didn't have clearance yet.
Did you know where it was going to go?
It was going to go. We knew it's going.
But
we were going to Palestine. To? No, we were on our way to Palestine. The Germans were sending us through Turkey to Palestine, over land. That was the reason for the whole thing. And then when the Mufti of Jerusalem joined the Axis, they said, no Jews here anymore. So now what are they going to do?
And there was the white paper, the British issued the white paper as well.
So no, this was before the white paper. This was the Mufti of Jerusalem. No, it was the white paper. But the Mufti of Jerusalem was part of the Axis, was part of Germany. So there's no more. There was no sense. So they didn't know what to do with us. So eventually they worked out, Rabbi Weissmandl and some of the other Askanim worked out that Switzerland was going to take in this group. Because we went to a camp. We were in Begen Belson. But now what? The world knew about this. The Red Cross knew about it.
Did you remember going into Begen Belson?
Sure.
You remember the camp?
I remember walking about 3 or 4 or 5, 7 miles from Hanover where the train stopped, Celle, when the train stopped till Begen Belson. There was a truck. My mother with the baby and my grandmother were taken by an open truck to there, but everybody else marched. I mean, there were some older people who were also on the truck. All of us marched. And it wasn't easy. My brother was only 5 years old. And I know I was carrying some kind of a bag of some sort. I asked some cousins to help me. To this day, I remember which cousin wouldn't help me with it.
Wow.
But, and then we arrived there. Before we arrived there, the train stopped in Linz. And they were going, that was about 2 days into the trip already. And they were going to disinfect us. So we were sent to one of these places where the showers were. But by that time we had heard enough about showers to know that we might not survive this.
You already knew?
By that time, I did, but enough people knew. So when we got there again, they dehumanized us. That was their major objective. Because you couldn't kill somebody that you know when you have as a human being like you. But they were not human anymore. Totally, it's like stepping on a bug. So we got there, and men and women were separated, and we were told to undress, and all the clothing to be left there. It's going to be
this is the same what happened in Majdanek and Auschwitz and all the places.
All the same places. Same happened to us, to the point where they were killed and we weren't. We had water coming out of the showers, not gas. But before we got to the showers, we have to march. Everybody got a little towel like this, naked. Ladies, old ones, new ones, young ones, pretty ones, old ones.
Totally dehumanized.
To dehumanize, that's all there was. And then you had to march, and there's all these maximum standing there, having a good time. And then some of actually one of my sisters also, they cut all their hair. It was the first thing, well. That's another one of way of humiliating us, that's it.
So you were part of the camp, you were actually put into...
That was still before we got to Begen Belson, this was in Linz. And from Linz, then when we came out of there, we found all our clothing, big heap, and go find your stuff. Probably 800-900 people, everybody stuffed with one big heap and throwing it. Finally, we did find it. Most people found something or other to put on. Then we went back to the wagon and went on and got off in Celle. That's where we marched from there to Begen Belson. Begen Belson, we
Judy, can I just ask you, because it's just unbelievable. On the train, for those 2 days, do you remember, was there food? Or
yes,
how was the train?
We stopped a few times and they gave us food. The Germans gave us some food, cheese, I know, and some salami of some sort, which of course most of Frum Jews didn't want to eat. And it was also, she was a Batamas, I think, and we had 3 Brig Rabbanim on trip with us. And they said, number 1, to eat, number 2, eat anything that we get, number 1 is to survive.
And this was on the Strasse, so it was in June. It was in June, July.
Right, so it was, she was a Batamas, was somebody about there.
It was a fast day.
Yeah, fast day. But I said, nobody's too fast, and whatever we get to eat, eat it. So I'm a very good customer, I eat. My sister, she threw it up. She couldn't swallow it. To this day, she won't look at cheese. She can't eat cheese or anything. So my mother traded some of that stuff for some sugar cubes for her, whatever, there were some people on. But it was all part of dehumanizing. Some places, the countryside, as the train went by, they threw us some food, somebody got some, but they didn't treat us as badly as the others. We got off the train sometimes, and we got water, and not much, little, but we weren't totally at them. For some reason, it was because they were expecting more money at the time when we finally got to Begen Belson, and when they sent us finally to Switzerland.
Okay, so can I just ask, so now we're going from where you went through the showers and thank God it was water.
We got back on the train. We had no idea where we were going.
And you got back on the train, how far was it to Begen Belson from?
I don't remember, but I know we got there. It was, then she was about time, it was very much near there because we were there June, July, August. August we got to Switzerland. It wasn't far.
How long were you in Begen Belson?
There was 2 groups in Begen Belson. The original 900 or so that were supposed to have been on this transport were, the Swiss was arranged with Switzerland, but they only took those 900 at that point. The others stayed in Begen Belson till December. We left in August, the end of August, because my sister's birthday we got to Switzerland. And my aunt and 2 aunts and some members of the family stayed in Begen Belson till October.
Because, till a bit later.
Until they arranged again with Switzerland to take the rest.
And also, it's probably they paid more money.
They must have paid the Germans
more. And what do you recall of Begen Belson?
First, I recall is that we slept everybody had their own cot. They were 3 high, but it wasn't like you read now and with Auschwitz they had 6 or 8 to a bed or something. We all had our own. And every morning they gave us, passed for coffee, some dark water and a piece of very dark bread. They figured it out now that it was some sawdust and all kinds of stuff in there. And that was for morning. Lunchtime they sent over a old-fashioned milk can with soup. It was like some vegetables, but the way they came from the earth, just stuck in there with the sand, with everything, no taste, nothing. And that was lunch or middle of the day. And at night, something similar again. That was it. But we got this little bread in the morning, and sometimes in the afternoon meal also, this dark bread. But my mother, because of the baby, got white bread. I mean, it was an unbelievable situation.
And you weren't separated?
No, we were all together. My father was on a separate side. Men were in different barracks in the camp. It was here and over there. And my brother was with us. He stayed with my mother. Was only 5 years old. And my father was there. But we met during the day. It was all right. You could, but at night or at any time, at air raid Sunday, you had to go.
And what did you do in the camps? Did they?
That was one of the problems. There was nothing to do. But so there was rumors flying all the time, and people heard this, and other people heard that, and there was an office. They made up like an office, and from there they tried with telex machines. I think they were doing something like that to find out what's going on. We didn't know were they successful. Rabbi Weissman was successful. Was anybody? Did they accomplish anything? Up until the time when this Nazi and one of the Germans came, and we had to. We stood, first of all, every morning we stood Zählappell. You stood in columns of 5, across, down. You had to stand while they counted you. I mean, what we could have gone with ourselves, why they had to count us. But if they made a mistake on the count or something, then they started again. So it could take 3 or 4 hours of standing. In July, August, it could be hours in the heat. And later on in the snow, in the cold. Made no difference. You just stood there. The Germans wore boots, so that was a good part of the morning, standing Zählappell.
Sure.
And after that, they brought us the breakfast, whatever, and the lunch. And then it was us children. We were told, go find Mr. Weiss. Do I know? They needed something to find out from somebody. So we ran around the camp calling people, are you Mr. Weiss? No, you. We had fun. I wasn't scared, let's put it that way. I don't remember being scared. I had my parents there, so I figured. Or I blocked it out. I don't remember now at all, but I would be scared. I don't remember ever being hungry. How can it be? We barely got any food.
Were you together with the other inmates from Begen Belson?
No,
or?
This was a separate camp.
It was a total separate camp?
Totally separate camp.
Within
Sonderlager.
Within Begen Belson?
Right. On this side of us was a regular camp, and on this side of us.
And you had no interaction between...
No. Yes, some people sat near the fence with a safer, and on the other side of the fence somebody sat with a book or something and sort of talked to each other. But if they were caught at it, they could be severely punished. But I don't remember. I do remember seeing people sitting on the fence like that talking to each other. Men, mostly. Wow. And us children, as I said, nothing. I had my little 2-month-old sister who I was supposed to watch. My father took they had these tall, what do you call them, bunk beds, right? So he took off, because there was quite a few of us in our family, took a few slots from the mattresses without them falling down, and he made a crib for my sister.
Wow.
He put it together. I don't know how he managed to put it together, but he did. And my mother had a piece of cloth in her suitcase, which was still with us. And he draped it all around it, and my sister had a crib. So I was told to watch her, and of course, my father had only one shirt that was on his back, and my mother wanted to wash it, and she put it to dry on the sun, and I was supposed to watch the shirt. But I got involved in reading a book that somebody loaned me, and the shirt got stolen.
Wow.
But I had one uncle there, and he had 2 shirts, so he gave my father one shirt. There's such vignettes I can tell you.
And Judy, how long were you in Begen Belson?
From June, July, August, about 2.5 months. That's all, us. The other group was there much longer.
And, okay, this is a very difficult question. They didn't put tattoos on?
No. Begen Belson wasn't tattoos, even the regular camp. Only Auschwitz and Birkenau. Only in that one they did the numbers. I think Mauthausen even didn't have, I don't think. I don't know, but in Bergen we weren't, for sure. Okay. No thing. They had to be...
Did you hear any, being so close to the rest of Begen Belson, did you hear any of the stories what was going on?
We only heard the stories of seeing them marched off to work, and they would leave at dawn and not come home till late. And as people spoke on the fence that they were working heavily, they were schlepping stones and things like that. But in the area that we were, I do not remember that people knew that people died or Auschwitz or all that. More than likely the grown-ups knew.
But they didn't want to tell the children.
We were children. Why burden us with such a thing? There's nothing to be done.
They say that it was the Sternbuch family that also...
Who?
The Sternbuch family.
Sternbuch, yeah.
They were very instrumental in getting money to arrange the release from Begen Belson to go to Switzerland.
They were very, very... That's how we got to Switzerland eventually, through the Sternbuchs and others who were instrumental in convincing the Swiss to take in these refugees. But they didn't want to. The Swiss are not Jew-loving.
No, what happened is that at the Avian conference, they actually said that we should put the religion on the passport. And that's when the J was put onto the passport. And it came from Switzerland.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. We lived in Switzerland after we got...
So then you went on... You remember going onto the train, going on the next step, leaving Begen Belson?
Leaving Begen Belson was also a whole story. Again, we were told to line up. It was in the middle of the day line up, which mostly didn't happen. No, what's going to be? And they called different names, different people. You had to go to the other side, get away from this group and line up over there. So my whole family was called, and my father's mother, my grandmother was called, and some parts of his sisters and brothers, but not all. One aunt was there with a daughter, and my aunt was called, but not her daughter. All my aunts spoke perfect German. They were German-Hungarian secretaries in Hungary already then. So they spoke perfect German. And one of my aunts walked over to this commanding officer, whatever, and he says, please don't separate a mother and daughter. They don't even know if anybody else in the family survived. Maybe it's only them, so don't separate them. So I said to her, get out of here before I kick you out of here.
Wow.
That was it. And then when time came when we again separated us, and those that had been told we were going, so my aunt and her daughter were both called, we were going together. But my aunt, the one who went on to try and convince them, was kept behind.
Was kept behind. But she eventually did come.
Eventually did come, but by that time her husband, who was so reliant on her that he didn't know how to put on his shoes probably without her, and my grandmother, who has lived with them all the years, came without her. So it was very traumatic for them. But they came out 3 months later.
Okay, so you go onto the train.
We were back on wagons till the border. At the border we had to get off, and they checked everything we owned, thinking, what could we have been smuggling?
The Germans checked?
The Germans, before I left, and before we left Germany. And then we crossed over to the border, and then there was regular trains waiting for us. And the regular passenger trains with seats and everything. And we went to Basel. That's where we crossed the border into Switzerland.
Wow. In
Basel. And in Basel, again, we were in quarantine, but they gave us food and bread, white bread everywhere. They got all sick from all the food. All of a sudden, everybody ate too much. And dysentery, they had, the Swiss had this Dergemüsli. It's some kind of oats and thing. It's just a health bar kind of a thing, but it was loose. So everybody ate it, and in Basel we were in I don't know if it was a school or something, where there were straw mattresses on the floor, and that's where we slept. And everybody got diarrhea and all that. All night long, people jumping up, standing in line. you know, because some of these things are in front of your eyes. It happened, you know. But that wasn't. And after that, we was distributed from there. We went to Montreux from there. But the Swiss, they are cold people. Not much. I'm not going to talk about that.
Did you have any interaction with the Jewish community in Switzerland?
Sure, we did. Mr. Bolak in Montreux. We had a Bolak family there. And we were in quarantine, but Mr. Bolak arranged to be able to come in and talk to all of us, everybody. Like my mother took out some of the jewelry that was hidden in her coat or something. And he went and changed that into money, got money for it, and he bought us boots. We were in sandals. And now we are in Switzerland in the middle of the winter. By the time it came Rosh Hashanah, it was cold. So my mother gave him the money, and he bought my sister and me and my brother boots.
And in Basel, when you first came to Basel?
No, over there we didn't interact at all.
You didn't interact at all?
No. Next day they put us back on the train, we went to Montreux. And we were in quarantine in the Belmont Hotel, a very nice hotel ground. And then we were until they distributed us to different parts of Switzerland.
And how long did you stay in Switzerland?
We stayed 3 years almost. Wait a minute, 44, 46, 47. Yeah, almost 2
Till
and a half
after the
years,
war?
Yes, till after the war. And then we went back to Hungary.
You went back to Hungary?
Because my father's mother went back by that time, and our apartment survived untouched. So my father said he wanted to see his mother all together.
And how was it like going back to Hungary? It must.
That was wonderful. We had all of a sudden normal lives, the same upper middle class life. There was Jewish school. There was good Jewish life. By the time we went back, it was already 8.5, 2 years later. After
and
the
you
war.
went to your same home that you had from before?
Yeah. One of the sad parts was that some of the family who lived there, who survived the war there, had to find other quarters because we came back. So it was my father's family.
But Judy, wasn't it strange going back to Budapest and
No.
now you see people,
So
friends, but you see people aren't there anymore, and when you hear what happened...
Most of the friends survived the war, most of my friends. But I didn't go back to school. By that time, they were graduating when we got back, Pesach time. So the class that I was with was graduating, so what was I going to do? I didn't go back. It was very little schooling, except in Switzerland, some, in Hungary before the war, and then in Switzerland some. And most of my schooling is self-taught, mostly. Wow. And in America, I didn't go to school anymore. I went to work right away. And in Switzerland, we went first, they sent us to a major school, a public school, but we couldn't keep up with it. Our French wasn't that good at that point yet. So they sent us someplace else, more a private school. And it was awful. I hated Switzerland with a passion. And to this day, when I think back of it. But they were good to us. You have to remember that.
Yeah, it's a karasatov.
Why did we go back to Hungary? Because one day I was coming from school, and my father happened to be on the street too. And some of the Swiss boys, the guys,
the non-Jewish boys?
Non-Jewish boys were cursing at us, and I was cursing back
In
better than they did, yeah. And I could curse better than they did. So my father said, my daughter is standing on the street corner cursing. Let's get out of here. So I did that. To this day, I remember more curse words than they knew.
Wow. So how old were you when you went back to
Hungary? Let's see, when I was 47, so I was 15.
15.
Yeah, about
and,
40.
and how long did you stay in Budapest?
We stayed till 49, 2 years, a little more, 2 years, 47 to 49. And then the Russians came in, became communist. Yeah. So my father said, okay, once they threw us out, this time we're going of our own free will. And it so happened that when we came back to Hungary, he went to get passports. We had Hungarian passports. For 3 years they were valid, so we were there 2.5 years, and we were able to leave. And then on the train, told us, but please don't forget, go directly to the consulate and register to renew your passport. So my father said, sure. So declared ourselves stateless. We renounced our citizenship and became stateless in Paris and lived there for 1.5 years.
In Paris?
In Paris, near Paris for a while.
Did you have family or you?
Nothing. Yeah, my mother had a cousin who also were in transit to try and come.
And where did you stay in Paris?
These cousins rented us a house in Montmorency, which is a suburb of Paris. And from there we moved into Paris in a hotel. There was a hotel that catered to refugees like that. There were a lot of them. You rented like 2-3 rooms, and one you could set up as a kitchen, food, and 2 were bedrooms.
Unbelievable. And what did you do during the day?
Trying to come to America, running different connections. This one has connections, that one has connections, trying to get to America. My brother went to school. My sister and I didn't. We watched younger sister. Actually, yeah, one of them was born there in Switzerland. My younger sister was.
And this is now in 49?
This is in 47, 49 we left Hungary. This was 47 in Switzerland. And then we were in Hungary, right. In 49 we left Hungary to Paris. Because we didn't have any other visas.
So now in Paris it's about 1949.
49. And we came to America in 1950.
And did it ever, was ever like coming to Israel, the new state of Israel?
Oh, I wanted to come to Israel badly. I was a Zionist. But my father's mother was here already by that time. And he had been here in 39. And he thought there were more chances here. And his mother was here. And I kept saying, Daddy, it doesn't work. Kept being rejected. Our visas kept on being rejected. Don't you see we are supposed to go to Israel? I said, okay, I'm going to join the Aliyat Anwar and I'm coming. My father said, the Germans didn't separate us. You are not going anywhere without the family. So we stayed to And then the joint didn't accept us because they said we left Hungary of our own free will.
Okay.
But there was some kind of organization that helped rabbis. So my father was registered as such.
Your father was a rabbi?
Never practiced or anything. He was registered as a rabbi. So then this organization got a ship's ticket to Australia because we couldn't get to America. So.
Wow.
And we were supposed to leave a week later, and my uncle sent a telegram. He found another Afghan who can get us to America. So we tried again. Cost us $2,000 he wanted to get us papers to America. So my father gave him $1,000 and said, you get
$1,000 in 1950 was a lot of money.
1949.
1949 is a lot of money.
1949 still. And then he said he'll get the other $1,000 after he gives us the papers. But of course he disappeared with our $1,000. And there was that. And that's when we were almost going to Australia. And then somebody said go back to Germany, and in the displaced persons camp,
the DP camps,
there we registered as if we had never left Germany, as after the liberation that we had stayed there. And that's how we finally came to America on the DP quota. In 1950, Pesach time, Purim time we went to the council and then came here, 1950.
So you went to the state, and where you went to New York?
New York, right. And my brother was born in 1950, September, we came in March. My mother was pregnant at the time, which on the boat, we came on an IRA, International Refugee Organization boat. I don't know how many people, the General Greeley. I have a booklet. I'm going to bring it to you next time, or I'll send it to you, which details some of the stuff that I just told you about how the Frank family survived the war.
Coming to America, to New York, did you also have to go via Ellis Island?
No.
It wasn't in operation?
Yes, it was. But we came on the displaced persons quota.
So it didn't go through
We came directly to New York. We were processed as refugees.
And growing up, okay, now how old are you when you got to America?
16.
16.
I went directly to work.
And you assimilated, not assimilated.
I understand.
But you
picked up a life.
You became part of the American.
Yes, absolutely.
It came quite easily to you.
It seems to me. I went to work with
learning English.
I know English somewhat because my father sent me to learn privately English. We had an English teacher who came to the house even, but nobody else managed to learn English except me. And so on the boat, on the refugee boat, I was an interpreter. I had an ILO. I was so big shot. And we got privileges, PX privileges. It was a military vessel, and we got PX privileges, but you had to stand in line for it, and quite a few people on that boat. But I didn't have to stand in line for anything because I had an IRO armband. So I made deals. My mother was pregnant and she traveled very badly. And so the only thing she liked, she could eat sour stuff, and also one of the things we could get at the PX was herring. And in the middle of the herring there was a pickle. And that's all my mother could eat. So I would tell people, I'll get their PX stuff, but they have to give me
you're a good daughter. What an amazing daughter. Wow.
I was such a big shot, you can't imagine. I'm the oldest in my family, and I love being in charge and all that for many years. But that was that boat. So at the end, they asked all the interpreters to clear first so that they can interpret for the others as they get off the boat. Okay. So they asked me, and they said, how many people in your family? I said 6. I said, okay, you can go back with them. You don't have to be interpreting for us. We're not going to clear 6 people just to get one interpreter. So it was interesting. America was interesting.
And you were happy that you went to America?
Yeah, we found ourselves here.
Did you make friends at a 16-year-old? You made friends?
I was 17, because I'm just saying at 18 I got married, so that was a year before I got married. I got married almost a year before, after we came here.
And did you make friends when you were...
No, sure. There was a lot of friends from school in Hungary that we were friends with. And otherwise my family, cousins and all that.
And when you told other people what happened to you and your ordeal, your horrendous ordeal, really, it wasn't... What you went through...
was nothing.
It's not compared to stories
that other people lived through. Compared to that, it was a cakewalk.
But could people relate to it?
We never talked about it. This was much later that these stories came up. Because in my own family, they knew. I mean, we talked about it before.
But you didn't talk about it to friends, American friends? Or
No.
They weren't interested, or you just felt...
Wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in talking about it. Life was totally different. People weren't interested in the past. If I tell you that I never asked my father who he is named for, and I asked all my cousins, they were the same way. Parents were parents. I mean, it was the generations weren't today. Yeah, you have to be your child's friend and all that. A parent was a parent. We had a very good relationship. They loved us and we loved them. But we didn't ask them questions. I'm so sorry now I never asked. And where did you go to school, Dad? And how was it when you went to school that they come from Romania or wherever? I never asked. And how was it in your house on a Shabbat? How was it when his father died early? His dad died right after the First World War. But we never did that. We lived in the present. It was during the war, it was in the present. After the war, it was in the present. Nobody thought backwards, forwards. We lived in the present. Man along, as I read a book once, as a leaf blown by the wind. It was about biblical time, whatever. But that's how we lived. That's how I recall that we lived. I got married, then my sister got married. So my parents did think of the future. They married us off, my brother went to yeshiva. They did think. But somehow or other, me as a child, as a daughter, as a young person, got married, started a life of my own. My husband was here in 1939. So they were Americans more. But nothing.
Now, Judy, I'm going to just ask you, because I'm sure whoever's watching this is going to be fascinated to ask. When you were on the train, did you meet Kastner, or did you ever see him?
I don't think so. It's possible. More than likely, I'd seen him and was involved in one way or another.
Did your father meet him, or did your father...
Probably. Because
but he never spoke about it?
My father was a very outgoing and involved kind of a person, but we never spoke about it.
Was it known as the Kastner Train growing up, or...?
At that time, much later, started going. I don't know what it was.
You just knew you went on a train...
We knew it was Kastner, I think. Or maybe only later. What would it be known otherwise? It had to have some kind of identification.
When the trial happened here in Israel, in Yerushalayim...
It wasn't publicized so much in America.
In America, you didn't really hear much about it.
And if they did, those that would have, I totally didn't pay attention. I don't know. I must be very stupid or something.
No, oy, chas v'chalila.
No, it's true, it's
Judy,
true.
do you remember seeing the Satmar Rebbe on the train?
The Satmar Rebbe, we had a very close relationship because he wasn't very well, and my mother got some special food because she was nursing a baby, and she shared it with my grandmother and with the Satmar Rebbe. It was like they called it potato soup or potato something. It was water that potatoes cooked in,
or
and
the
sometimes there were little
peel.
there were some little pieces of potato in there. So when my brother was born in America, the Rebbe was there already, and so my father invited him to be sandik at my brother's bris. So the Rebbe came to our house, which was later on unheard of. We lived in East New York, he lived in Williamsburg, but he came and then he washed to the Suda. And everybody asked, how's that? So he said, she shared her food with me in Begen Belson, I can share her food with you.
Wow, that is actually
We
very
were very
nice to
close.
hear.
We were close to, my father was close. My father went every before Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah, went to the Rebbe for the bracha. And later on he took my brother, that brother who was born in America, whom Rebbe was his Sunday. He wasn't a learning type. He didn't have the whatsoever to sit and learn. So my father took him to the Rebbe. What shall he do? So the Rebbe said, marry him off early and put him to work. Don't try to make him into a learner. He's not cut out for it.
Not everybody, it's not favorite.
Not everybody is cut out for it. But he was a smart man. That was one smart man, let me tell you. I didn't agree with some of his philosophies, but smart, he was beyond smart. Very, very smart. No question. His philosophy, okay, so I didn't agree. Didn't have to agree with everybody.
His views on Israel.
Yes, Israel, right. Didn't quite agree to that, but...
And Judy, have people that were on the train, people that went through the same
we never kept
incredible journey,
never kept up with each other, not at all.
There was never that
never
you would
any
meet
connection, never any... I have too much family there. I had aunts and uncles, and we had too much family in our own little group, and people didn't know each other from before. So on the train, under the worst of circumstances, you're going to make friends.
No, but when you were in Begen Belson, you developed...
Begen Belson, again not. It was... You were scared of your own shadow. You didn't want to make waves. You didn't want to do anything that might backfire on you. In the middle of the night when we had to go to the bathroom, there was a bathroom. You could a washroom, whatever it is, a communal washroom and bathroom, whatever. But to go out there, you took your life in your hand because they would be scared that they had watchtowers all around Begen Belson, and those rays from the watchtowers kept cutting through the camp. People were scared, plain scared, that's all. So I remember, and they did all kinds of crazy things to make people, again, just to dehumanize us, even in this place. They decided every once in a while a doctor came to look at us over. Oh yeah, this one is sick, this one has got lice, and for no reason. And then they poured all kinds of stuff over your back so you cleaned up. And so I don't know, it was, and I don't recall being scared. I must be that I blocked it out.
I think you must have had also amazing parents that sheltered you. And,
that's one. And secondly, I must have blocked it out because otherwise I should remember.
And have nightmares and have terrible nightmares.
Right, and not. So I'm telling you, either I'm stupid
or
I'm very smart and I blocked it out.
Judy, you're very smart and you're amazing.
It's one or the other. I don't understand.
Judy, and I just want to ask because it is really quite... difficult, this question, but when you look back on the Kastner train and you look back what happened at the trial, and I'm sure you heard what happened,
yes.
And when you've seen documentaries, so people say that Kastner took people that could afford it or his own family, but he didn't inform others of the great danger that was pending, and some look at him as a traitor, and some look at him as a hero.
I don't think he was either. I think he was a plain man who tried to do the right thing. And as far as not taking people without means is also not true. A lot of them without means got on, whether by crook or a crook, but they did. That I don't think had to do with him, about taking people with money or not. It was eventually when they were bargaining with the Germans.
He didn't inform...
That he didn't inform people. Again,
that I think was when the trial happened. That was the major thing where they said,
that's right.
Why didn't he...
If he had informed them, maybe
he
could have saved themselves.
If he knew what was happening, he could have saved
themselves. I don't know if he could have. This is kind of thing, again, it's in God's lap, it's God's hand.
We don't know.
We can't really tell. All I know is that those that he saved are saved. And if, in Hebrew you say, anybody saving one soul in Israel,
like
saving the whole world, right?
It's from the Sun, it's from
right, for the Talmud. So in that sense, he saved a lot of people. And whether we have to be grateful to him or not, we bought ourselves out of it, but he put it together. He was instrumental in putting it together. He wasn't the only one. There were a lot of people. He succeeded in this part of it. Rabbi Weissmandl tried very hard and he didn't succeed. The Jews, the Czechoslovakian Jews, he almost had them saved with the trucks and things. It didn't happen. So it was in all God's hands in that many ways. And the fact that they eventually cleared him of treason in the sense that he didn't inform the people, what could they have done once this train was? Maybe they could have made another train. I don't know. Will anybody ever know? No.
It's only it's between him and Hashem, really.
That's it. It's between not him even. It's all Hashem. His hand decided to save this many through Kastner, or I don't know. All I know is I'm extremely grateful to him. My family stayed together. We survived. We are here to tell the tale. My sister married 2 years after me in 1953. Her husband was in Auschwitz. He has a number. I think he has a number. 17 years old when he got to Auschwitz. Every member of his family was wiped out. Nobody. 7 sisters, brothers, parents, grandparents. Nobody left. Now, they were married on their 50th or 60th anniversary, their children, their 4 children, and many more grandchildren and great-grandchildren. They made them an anniversary party. There were nearly 100 people there. So this one boy that survived today has nearly 100 descendants.
Unbelievable.
So this is the kind of thing that it's in God's hand.
Yeah.
My mother went to Uyala where her parents were deported from. There was a haskara from the town made for their Jews. 89 members of her family she declared dead.
Wow.
I mean, when you think of this, it's mind-boggling. So if Kastner saved these 1,900 or whatever many people, he was instrumental maybe in saving them. So can you call him bad? I don't know. Maybe if every town would have a Kastner, maybe they would have saved him.
The only thing which I remember from reading in the Perfidy and with the trial is that he had the opportunity to warn the Kehillah, to warn the people.
What could they have done at that time, the Kehillah? What could anybody have done if you have warned? Couldn't have done. Maybe panic. Who knows? He wasn't a tzaddik, for sure not. He's sure not there was more to this than meets the eye to him even. But he wasn't a total devil either. He did save some people. He saved his own family. Well, of course, wouldn't you? So.
Wow, Judy, you have such, I must tell you, it's such a zchut for me, really, to have met you, first of all.
I'm telling you.
You've got such an incredible karasatov. You have such a wonderful appreciation and such strength. Your faith, your emunah is unbelievable. Your devotion and your faith to Judaism is incredible. After going, and you have been through an ordeal that you wouldn't wish on your one's worst enemy.
No, for sure not. But again, I insist that we didn't have a tenth of what people went through. My brother-in-law, I mean, the one who lost his entire family.
And he went through Auschwitz.
Auschwitz. And they carried 100-pound sacks on their backs, up and down, for no reason. Just they threw it down to bring it up again, and things like that. Food they didn't have. How did they survive? Where is their emunah? And they remained from Jews.
And he remained from?
From. He was a single boy.
Religious, he remained religious.
Yeah, he was 17 years old, maybe even less, because I think he came out of there, he wasn't yet 20. And there was one rabbi in America who had a yeshiva and all that, and there was a few boys with him together with this group that survived and came to America. And this rabbi took them in, the Matazofarov, and he became like a surrogate father for them for a while until they settled themselves here and there. And then he went to Los Angeles. He had one aunt who had lived in Los Angeles. He went there. And he couldn't because the aunt wasn't very from, and his emunah was there, and he wanted to be from. He wanted to go back to yeshiva. I don't think he did. A little bit he did. Now he does more yeshiva than then. He's over 70, 90. He was just 90 now. So it's, I mean, as far as my attitude, if I didn't have this attitude, I would have long been gone because I'm going to start crying and I don't want to. I had a wonderful marriage. This was my husband. A wonderful, wonderful man. We married over 60 years.
Over 60 years?
Over 60 years. Never had children. So either I would have given up, and when he passed away, which is now 7 years, going to be now 7 years, but I decided to go on. And one reason was when my father died, my mother, every time anybody would talk about my father, she would cry. So the kids stopped talking about my father. They didn't want my mother to cry. Much later, of course, she did already know that. So it's one thing I said, the kids will be able to talk about him, I won't cry. But when
it's really hard.
Could get emotional. So unless you have a strong willpower, I just broke my hip 5 or 6 weeks ago. And I said, I'm going to be well enough to come to Israel because my nephew is making bar mitzvah. I have to be here. Why did I have to be here? Who said so? But they're very close to me. They were here today also. I had 15 people for lunch, and last night also. So if I didn't have this willpower, I would be gone. My mother was a very strong woman. My father was a strong person too. And somehow or other, I decided I'm going to survive this somehow. So that must have been with me already those days that I was able to go on and just go. I don't know.
It's unbelievable.
It's a very, very individual kind of a state. It's very yachidi, as they say, or whatever they say. It is. You can take it any way you want. You can either lie down in bed after the surgery or decide to move. I wanted to.
You have such a beautiful attitude, really, such a wonderful attitude.
I don't know if it's so beautiful. I'm not a really good person. I
fight with Judy, people. You're amazing. And
no, I'm not at all. No, but the only thing is that I always tried, since I don't have children, all the other kids, all my sisters and brothers and nieces, nephews, great nephews. Today I had here, I don't know how many nephews and nieces. I always told everybody, I shared the children with my family, with my brother and my sister. And it was that way. And the fact that I don't have my own, they are very close to me all. Because when you have your own children, you entertain your nephews and nieces and all that. But you are really with your children. But since not, each one feels like they would be the only ones with me.
Well, Judy, you're a very special person.
I love them all. And with my husband's family, there was never his family and my family. It was always our family. So that's the same way. His nieces and nephews were here today. I had two couples of his here. Because we never had any separation, but that's because we didn't have any children. So again, you had to live through that. Somebody could get very bitter or depressed, or decide to make the best of it. And somehow, now that I mention it to you, I never thought into this so much. And I never talk, I do talk a lot, but now that I think of it, each one of us tried to make the other feel that it's okay, even if maybe your fault, we didn't know really, maybe I didn't know, whatever, but make sure that he doesn't feel that I have a resentment because of that, or I have a resentment because of him, or he has a resentment because of. In 60 years of marriage, I don't remember my husband ever saying a harsh word.
Wow.
Never. The worst that he could do, if he sometimes heard me on the phone with my mother and he didn't like the way I was talking to her, he would say,
sure.
I love, watch.
So that was the worst. It's a beautiful picture of
the worst that he could ever think.
Wow.
This book,
you can see.
My family put together for his Shloshim. Everybody wrote in it.
Wow, it's a book
on my husband. Zichron Abraham. He was special.
Well, you're very special. Judy, and you mentioned to me before we spoke that when they did air this documentary on Kastner and you were in the movie house.
That's right.
And then afterwards, can you just tell it? Because it is something
that
incredible.
That was fantastic. The person who sponsored this whole movie or at the end spoke about it. And then somebody said, maybe there is somebody in the audience here who has heard of the Kastner transport. And my sister and I, we both raised our heads and we said we were on the Kastner transport. Well, we were Queen of England. Everybody turned around in their seats and got up, wanted to hear and what's our opinion and whatever. And that's, I told you, I said it then and I say it again. I don't know whether he was a traitor. I don't know if he was a tzaddik. I don't know. But I know I am forever grateful to him. He saved my whole family.
Yeah.
He was instrumental. My God saved my family, but he was instrumental.
He was a shaliach. It was a shaliach. Yeah.
And my whole family, my grandmother, 3 or 4 aunts, some of their children. It's nothing to sneeze at.
It's unbelievable.
Then 6 million die and you manage to survive like that. Many people don't believe it that we were ever deported or anything like that because we were all together. How could you have been all together? Young, my mother's with a 2-month-old baby. How could that be?
It really was like a miracle.
A miracle, a total miracle.
And that your father had and your parents had they had the foresight, they had the chokhmah, to go into this train. They could have just said, well, let's wait, and then he sent you into the countryside.
That's right. It was one of those things that I said, I never appreciated my mother enough. Can you imagine growing up sheltered? It
couldn't have been very easy at all.
No, it was terrible. She had to pack. First, we went to the countryside, leaving my father in the bunker. She with 4 children, 4 children packing up, going. And my brother, now you explain to these children, you know, we are not Jewish anymore. Yeah, be careful what you're saying, be careful. My brother stands out on the porch and says, I am not eating breakfast unless you give me my tzitzis.
Wow.
So, in the train, a shliach took us, somebody went with us for this thing. On the train, he says, we passed such a little airfield. Oy vey, there isn't a plane here. I mean, my mother must have died 1,000 deaths every time such a thing came up, right? So then she packed. Then my father sends his taxi. She doesn't know what she's getting into. She packs. We get into the taxi. We go. Then we get to the train. Then we get to Begen Belson. Then we get... Every time, this is a woman who has led a sheltered life all her life. My father was... upper middle class, money we had, all of a sudden it's just packs, goes off into the unknown. We wind up in Switzerland and they tell us, oh, you can't be Jewish, you don't speak Yiddish, because Hungarians didn't speak Yiddish much. Again, pack, and again pack. Then we went back to Hungary, she packed. Again, we left Hungary to France, again she packed. Go into the unknown with children, with little children.
Into Germany.
Right, Germany, Switzerland.
DP camp.
DP camp. Began back to the DP camp. Unbelievable. Then finally we get on the boat to come to America. Every time. You know how many times that she went through this? And I never ever heard her complain about this. Yes, one time we were in Switzerland and there was a communal dining room, and Friday night my mother lit candles upstairs and my father would come from shul. We were still in the refugee camp, right? And so my father would come from shul, make kiddush upstairs, and then go down, we would go down to eat. So one Friday night, my mother is sitting there davening or something, and the candles are on the table, and I'm sitting here, and somehow or other I knocked over the candles, and it burnt a hole in the tablecloth. And my mother got so upset. She was hysterical. And I got so upset that she's so upset that I upset her so much. And why is she so upset at me? I didn't mean it. She knows I didn't mean it. And I keep telling her, but I didn't need it. And my father comes home from shul, and he says, what's going on here? We are both crying like crazy. And my mother said, look what she did. She burned a hole in the tablecloth. My father said, the whole world is burning and you worried about the tablecloth. Wow. So then I felt even worse. Now he's hollering at my mother. Not hollering, but...
Wow, what a family. Shoot, Judy, what a...
Wonderful family.
What a special family.
Very, very special. My father was a wonderful person. I'm telling you, in all the years that he was alive and I was a child at home, I only got smacked twice as a girl, as a child. One was fresh to a maid. My father happened to pass by when the maid tells me to pick up my pajamas after taking a bath or something, and I said, what does my father pay you for?
Wow.
And the second time it was fresh to my mother. And that was the only 2 times I remember getting a smack from my father. It was very, very good. He had patience to all of us. He was a very good man. And then I was lucky enough to have a husband who had very much patience and was a good man too. But it's now already 7 years. And he was sick between. We had an accident in between in America, a bad accident. My mother passed away in the accident. So we had a long, interesting life. Sad in some ways.
But sad, but you've seen so many things and you've seen so many miracles, and your whole story is one miracle after another.
After another, absolutely. And in many, many ways we saw God's hand helping us. There's no question in my mind. No question. Even this, I said, I sat outside in the garden at one point and on a pretty flimsy folding chair, and the sun was in my eye. I was reading, and I must have dozed off a second, and I tumbled over onto concrete and I broke my hip. Now, I could have broken my head. I could have broken my nose. Do I know what? But it was only my hip. And God was good enough that I got a proper surgeon, I got the right...
And you can there is a child, you can.
And then I made it here. Yeah. 5 weeks, less than 5 weeks after the surgery. Nobody can believe it. And I'm telling you, I'm getting ein hurrah because everybody tells me, you're amazing, you're amazing.
Judy, you are amazing, and you know, your story is, your story and your family, and just that your family kept their faith after going through, I know it's compared to others it might seem, but what you went through is
also,
it's
awesome.
There's no, it's unbelievable. No one should ever have to go through what your family went through.
The most unbelievable part is that we all stayed together.
It's incredible. It's Mina Shamayim. You were blessed. You were blessed that you stayed together.
Yes. I mean, it's like God sent an angel to just watch over us, because otherwise, how do you do it? Wow. We get to Switzerland, and my mother was pregnant, and my sister is born there, and then later on in Paris, when we lived in Paris, she had a miscarriage, went to the hospital. We didn't even know it. I mean, we did know it more or less. And then get to America, and my brother is born. I mean, you know what she went through, that woman? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But she was a strong lady. She was. And she raised us with an iron, I mean, a glove in an iron hand, something like that. She was a very strong lady.
Judy, I just want to wish you a...
thank you.
And maybe stream, you should just have Mazel and Bracha.
And I'm telling you, I can't believe it that you listen to all this.
Oh, Judy, it's the most unbelievable story. It really is. It's
believe
something...
me, it's not.
It's such a sweat. It's such a privilege to...
It's an interesting... it was an interesting... Not that I tell it to you.
You know, Judy, you are part of Jewish history. You really are.
All of us.
And your history is part of Jewish history.
It is. And then in America, this Project Witness interviewed people for their memories of the Shoah and things. But we were not here yet, I think. One of my cousins was interviewed for it. And I made a big mistake, and I'm going to try to rectify it now. In Yad Vashem, we didn't register my grandparents and other people who passed away.
So when can register?
I'm going to go and register. I'm going to check it now. We took home papers at one point, and for some reason it was never done.
It's never too late.
No. One of the things I said to my nephew, I'm going to go to Yad Vashem, and I'll get the papers again.
So Judy, I just want to end off by saying that you may be streamed till 120 in gesund, in health and happiness, and mazel and bracha.
And do me a favor, edit this and take out all the
Judy, and I just want to mention, you are really an example for all of us to emulate.
Thank
you.
Thank you very much.
You are very special, and if only more of us could be like you.
Oh, please.
Your devotion, your strength.
You're too much. That's too much already.
No, really, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. It's been an honor and a privilege to meet
you.
I
really appreciate it.
And I thank you for sharing.
That
Judy, I thank you for sharing your very personal story of you and your family, your remarkable story. Thank God people will be able to see it and to appreciate it and to see the hand of Hashem.
The next generation, because there is 3 generations forward, because it's, let's say, my sister, her daughter, her granddaughter, and her great-granddaughter. That's 4 generations.
That's true. So Judy, I want to really thank you so much.
Yeah, wait a minute, my parents first, so it's 5.
That's right.
And my mother lived to see one great grandson.
That's wonderful.
Right. Was a good lady.
Judy, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, and I hope you didn't waste your time.
Oh, you it's been such an honor and a privilege, really.
Wonderful. I'm glad you think so. Glad.